Every week we are lots of people arrested for committing all sorts of crimes, but this week we're taking a closer look at those doing the arresting. Last year, at least 22 Corpus Christi police officers were disciplined internally for a variety of offenses. 6 of them involved more than just a simple letter of reprimand, and we're highlighting the worst case tonight. It's a story you'll only see on Action 10. Last May, 3 men arrived at the City Detention Center downtown in handcuffs. Cody Lewis, Ernest Mitchell, and Roderick Hornsby. Lewis was arrested for drug possession, Mitchell and Hornsby for interfering with his arrest. At first, everything seems to be normal. The men calmly line up against the wall to be processed, when suddenly an officer throws Roderick Hornsby to the ground and holds him there, even elevating his arms, which is very painful while in handcuffs.
You're lying on the ground.
Yes, sir.
His knee in your back?
Knee in back, knee was in the neck, in the ear. He just...
Your hands, in part of the video, you can see them.
He's elevating higher and higher. It felt like 10 minutes, but I think the video shows like 3 minutes or so, something like
20
that.
20 seconds, something like that.
The officer who threw Hornsby to the ground is Senior Officer Norman Morton, who later had to explain his actions to Internal Affairs after Hornsby filed a complaint about excessive force. In his recorded interview, Morton told Internal Affairs that just before the takedown, Hornsby got very vocal and started to struggle and resist.
He didn't comply with your commands to turn around?
No. And then when I put my hands on him to make him turn around, he started to pull and struggle, so I don't know what he's going to do, so safest and easiest thing to do is put him straight to the ground.
Did you pull and struggle?
No, I didn't pull and struggle. You can clearly see in the video I didn't pull and struggle.
At anyone at this point?
No, like I said, he didn't spit, he didn't kick, I wasn't going to give him any.
So he was just being verbal, basically?
He was being verbally aggressive when I tried to turn him around and force him, and he didn't want to turn, so I just took him straight down to the ground.
You seen the video from CDC? Did you watch it?
Absolutely.
What was your take on the video?
Well, it's pretty obvious. I didn't like it.
Chief Floyd Simpson says although a handcuffed prisoner can still hurt an officer very badly, it's clear that excessive force was used in this situation. As with all discipline cases, a special review committee made up of other higher-ranking officers eventually looked at all the evidence from Internal Affairs. They recommended Morton be terminated for using excessive force, providing false statements on a police report, and lying to Internal Affairs. But Chief Simpson has the final word, and he scaled back Norman Morton's punishment to a 2-week suspension, believing that while disturbing, the incident should not cost a long-time officer his job.
I have to look at the totality. Norman has been here a long time. He's served the community well. He has many accommodations in his file, and so I think that he's salvageable. Obviously, I didn't terminate. He's salvageable, and I think that he can go on and continue to serve the public well, just as he's done for many, many years.
Hornsby couldn't believe Morton wasn't fired and worries the same thing will happen to him or someone else again.
How has this affected your opinion of CCPD?
And every time I see a cop, I think about this man here.
Chief Simpson says this incident is not an example of what CCPD stands for and won't be tolerated.
Did he exhibit misconduct in this particular situation? Yeah. Did I act on it? Yes. Was my discipline to him appropriate? We'll see.
The chief said, we'll see, because Officer Morton has appealed his punishment, and that process is still ongoing. Roderick Hornsby has already retained an attorney who told me they are just about to file a lawsuit against the city. By the way, the charges against Hornsby were dropped. The other 2 officers in the room at the CDC that night were also issued letters of reprimand for not stepping in or saying anything about it to anyone afterward. We were unable to find out what happened to the CDC employees who also did nothing. There are currently 4 officers employed by CCPD, about another 200 civilians. By far the majority are never involved in confirmed cases of misconduct, but every year a few find themselves on the opposite end of an interrogation table. We told you about one especially violent case last night. Tonight, the other 5 that all resulted in suspensions last year. Senior Officer Matthew Morrow was suspended for a day last year for accidentally leaving his AR-15 patrol rifle on the back of his trunk while unloading his equipment in CCPD's parking lot downtown. Investigators believe it was out of the open for about 10 minutes before a civilian employee noticed it. The next case involves the Whataburger at SPID in Nile. Officer David Saldana was dispatched to a domestic disturbance, but initially he refused to respond, saying he was taking a meal break instead.
Today we have a disturbance pending 63-4 Baltic. I'm waiting for another unit.
Careful, I'll be out of Whataburger now.
You're not clear Bravo 334 until another unit gets clear.
Bravo 330, is that a priority 1 call?
Negative. It's not. It's party 2, but yours not clear.
Careful, I'll be out of Whataburger now.
At least one other officer who heard that exchange actually called dispatch to share his thoughts.
I'm just trying to let you know that all of us heard that, so we don't support that, okay?
Saldana later told Internal Affairs he was feeling sick and needed food. He was eventually handed a 2-day suspension for not responding and for lying to Internal Affairs. The committee of officers reviewing his case said the significant delay in the police response of over 6 minutes involving a call of domestic violence could have had tragic results.
We have an update on Officer 330 and what he is doing these days. He released.
Another officer was suspended for a confrontation during a dodgeball tournament at Dewey's Beer Garden on Rodfield Road. Officer Eric Smith, who admitted to drinking for several hours, fought a man in the crowd, made a derogatory comment about police. That man told Internal Affairs that Smith grabbed him by his head and shoved his head into Officer Smith's crotch area and later slapped him across the face. Smith denied there was any physical contact, but said he was intoxicated and drove home afterward. For everything, he accepted a 2-day suspension and agreed to seek counseling. In June of last year, there was a hit and run here on Alameda near Robert. Photos from that night show a utility pole was snapped in two. AEP's damage was about $3,000. Officers at the scene found a license plate and traced it back to this heavily damaged truck parked at an apartment complex nearby. The truck belonged to Officer Robert Mayorga, Jr., who was nowhere to be found and didn't return phone calls until the next day. According to the Internal Affairs reports, Mayorga admitted to drinking in the hours leading up to the wreck, but did not admit to being intoxicated. Along with receiving 2 traffic citations, he also got a 2-day suspension. Finally, there is Senior Officer Jason Volkman, whose office is located at City Hall. A routine audit of department computers in October found 119 images of nearly naked women posing in bras, thongs, and bikinis. And while visiting one of those websites, his computer was infected with a virus that caused the state to consider taking away CCPD's access to critical state and national criminal databases. Volkman admitted to viewing the images and was very apologetic. He was suspended for 2 days. Police Chief Floyd Simpson believes that while officers should be held at a higher standard, in the end, his department isn't all that different than the rest of the community.
And there's no complex organization, including yours, that escapes employees from exhibiting misconduct. We come from the public. We are the public. And 99% of the time, our people go out and they perform heroically.
Police are supposed to be a higher standard.
Unlike anybody else, from time to time, we have issues of misconduct that we have to deal with.
Then again, sometimes he doesn't have to deal with them. Driving Robert McChester, the officer convicted in federal court of having a sexual relationship with a 15-year-old girl, and Justin Luetta, the officer accused of concealing evidence in the McChester case, all resigned last year. They never had to be disciplined by CCPD at all.
We have an update on Officer McChester, the child molester. After multiple internal affairs investigations that led to no action by the Corpus Christi Police Department, the FBI got involved and convicted McChester. He is now in federal prison.
Already on paid leave before turning in the resignations this week. John Rapolo first broke this story and joins us live with the latest. John.
Yeah, well, those 2 officers resigning today, both of them recent graduates of the police academy. One of them was the president of the graduating class. Today, the CCPD police chief speaking out. They had a whole career in law enforcement in front of them, but because of some allegations of misconduct, these two brand new CCPD officers are off the force.
That's just the end of it.
CCPD Chief Floyd Simpson still remaining very tight-lipped about specifics. We broke this story last week, and we had to dig for details about what these officers did to get them in hot water in the first place. Both were part of this police academy class in August. Brian Cantu was the class president and spoke at the ceremony. Officials said a few weeks back Cantu had a disagreement with his girlfriend, became distraught, and held a gun to his own head. We interviewed the chief when the officers were first suspended last week.
What I don't want to do is to cloud the issues by talking about specifics in the investigation with the media.
So we got specifics ourselves. The second resignation accepted today was from this man, Spencer Christian. He also graduated from the police academy in August. According to Dallas police, Christian was arrested about 2 weeks ago for assaulting a family member. He was picked up in Arlington that same day after a car accident and shipped back to Dallas to face that charge.
We hire people with high expectations. Once you put the badge on, there's an even higher threshold that your conduct, both on and off duty, will be above approach.
Well, a third officer from that same police academy class that graduated in August has also resigned, but not for any kind of misconduct. Yes, she is a female, wanted to change careers. Live in the studio, John Rapolo, Action 10 News. John, thank you.
The Corpus Christi Police Department, who was arrested over the weekend for DWI. The police department says senior officer Hector Corona resigned today. Now, he was pulled over by a fellow officer around 3 a.m. Sunday. He was not on duty at the time. The department had placed Corona on restricted duty during its investigation, but that is now over because he's resigned from the police department.
Well, a Corpus Christi police officer has resigned after the department started up an investigation into him.
Now, that investigation was just in its early stages, and now that he has resigned, it's not going to be completed. Investigative reporter Andrew Ellison joins us here in the studio now with more on this story. Andrew.
Well, Lee, it was Captain Bernardo Torres who resigned on Friday after working on the force for over 27 years. Now, CCPD says that officials told me today that they were in the early stages of investigating Torres for misusing company equipment. They say that Torres was using department computers for inappropriate reasons, but Police Chief Floyd Simpson says that they weren't able to get very far in their investigation because the captain resigned. Does the timing of his resignation seem odd?
Not to us. It's his choice. You know, you make a choice to come and work, and then you make a choice when to leave. He chose to leave.
Now, we tried to talk with Torres at his home today, but nobody answered the door.
All the faces there. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. I'm Katuri Arte.
And I'm Joe Gazen. At the top, some bizarre behavior involving an assistant prosecutor in the district attorney's office. Police say he was found early this morning outside his apartment in the downtown area wearing only underwear and not willing to answer any questions.
It actually took 4 Corpus Christi police officers to subdue Christopher Morel. Rudy Trevino is first at 6 with the story. Rudy?
It is a bizarre incident, to say the least, but tonight no one has more questions about what happened to this young misdemeanor prosecutor who was said to be in his late 20s than his boss, District Attorney Mark Skirka.
I don't know what it is. We haven't heard any information from the hospital or what the situation is.
The incident happened sometime around 6:30 this morning, just outside the Limerick Apartments on Chaparral and Cooper's Alley. This is where Morel lives. According to a witness who did not want to appear on camera, it took 4 police officers to subdue Morel, telling us one officer had to place a knee on Morel's back to keep him on the ground. According to residents at Morel's apartment complex, they found his apartment door wide open. Morel's boss says the young prosecutor was not arrested and is not facing any charges. According to Skirka, the officers knew something was not right with Morel.
Officers are trained to recognize situations for what they are, and if a person is a danger, could be a danger to themselves or others, they would seek medical treatment instead of putting them in the city detention center. And that's my understanding is what happened.
Now, the young prosecutor, who has only been working in the DA's office for about 4 to 6 months, was transported to Spahn Memorial for evaluation. No word of alcohol or drugs may have been involved. Joe, got you.
Just bizarre.
Yep.
It is.
All right, Rudy, thank you.
And some scary moments outside of Grant Middle School this morning for parents who are dropping off their kids. Thanks for joining us, everyone. I'm Katu Diarte.
And I'm Rudy Trevino. CCISD officials say a CCISD officer who was trying to direct traffic was forced to pull out his gun on a driver. Bill Churchwell is first at 5 from Grant Middle School with today's top story.
Well, imagine you have about 1,100 kids being dropped off. You have a lot of traffic, and what you do not have are crossing guards. You only have one CCISD police officer trying to direct the chaos. And then this happens. Take a look. This is a picture of the scene given to us by a 3 News viewer. It appears to show the officer pointing his gun at the windshield of a small silver car. During that time, witnesses say kids were all over the school property and saw the whole thing go down. The officer was forced to draw his weapon after a woman behind the wheel of the car hit the officer. It happened around 8:30 this morning when district officials say the officer was directing traffic and the woman was attempting to do a U-turn and go the wrong way. Witnesses say the woman was stuck in traffic and confused. However, after repeated commands from the officer to stop, the driver ended up hitting the officer. 31-year-old Misty Rojas, who also goes by the name of Melissa, was cuffed and taken into custody for assault on a public servant. Now, we spoke with one witness who actually took up for the driver.
He was standing in front of the car telling her to back up, and she couldn't because, she was going to hit the curb. So he kept telling her back up, back up. She wouldn't do it, so he pulled his gun out on her, which forced her to edge back and hit the curb, and he just sat there with his gun out.
Now, I spoke with CCISD police chief by phone who said his officer acted appropriately and that he has an obligation to prevent a person from causing harm to himself or anyone else. The officer, whose name has not been released, will be okay. He was checked out and he will be on light duty for a few days. But back out here live, a letter actually went home with students this afternoon letting parents know about the incident and actually has some do's and don'ts. What's expected from parents when they pick up and drop off their kids. Reporting live tonight, Bill Churchwell, 3 News. Now back to you.
Bill, thanks a lot for that report. Amazing.
Story is first at 6. 5 police officers involved in the confrontation at airline near Cimarron were put on paid administrative leave as a matter of routine, but they are all said to be back on duty tonight. Reports show the man was being questioned for riding his bike the wrong way down airline, and they say he resisted arrest and that they were forced to use pepper spray and the taser weapon to subdue him. However, detectives continue to investigate the incident, and they say they'd like to talk to anyone who may have witnessed.
We have an update. The man that was tasered and pepper sprayed later died. We have an update. This is about the Corpus Christi Police Department and the use of taser. There have been multiple taser deaths on the hands of police. No police have lost their jobs. The victims are all dead.